Hello, my dear students. I am Professor Dr. Kamal Bhattacharya from Motherhood University, Faculty of Arts, Humanities and Social Sciences. This video is for my PhD students going to pursue English PhD, and this is for the coursework they are now pursuing. Today I will discuss about the post-structuralism. Post-structuralism is actually little complex for the students who are not exposed to the foreign literature, modern literature, foreign modern literature, because post-structuralism relies on the merits of the reader, because post-structuralists or post-structuralism believes in the born of reader. In late 20th century, 1960, 50s to 60s, the movement, philosophy and literature, literary criticism, which is difficult to summarize in a one sentence, or it should not be defined. Okay, generally defines itself as the opposition of the popular structuralism. In popular structuralism, we have seen the importance of language, syntactical applications, grammatical, linguistics applications of the writers. Post-structuralism, it goes beyond the visible structuralism and that invisible nuances, invisible applications of the writer. Okay, that is the word, the shape, the color, the meaning of the word. These are the basic interest, areas of interest. So, post-structuralism, actually started in France. Okay, it is closely related to postmodernism. Postmodernism, after the Second World War, whatever the literature has grown. In the post-structuralist approach to textual analysis, the reader replaces the author, because a writing cannot be complete by itself, and when a writer writes something and he or she has no control over his or her writing, so that is why it is called the death of a writer. So, in the post-structuralism, the textual analysis, the reader replaces the author as the primary subject of inquiry and without a central fixation of the author. Post-structuralism examines other sources of meaning, reader, culture norms, other literature, time, color, shape, which are therefore never authoritative and promise to consistency. So, it changes. Post structuralist emphasis on that in the changes of meaning and interpretation. A reader's culture, his or her background and society then share at least an equal part of interpretation of a piece to the cultural and social circumstances of the author. So, you cannot fix a writing in a particular genre, because the interpretation will vary according to the cultural background of the reader, the teachings of the reader, and interpretation of the reader. Okay. Some of the key assumptions that underlie the post-structuralism, they are the concept of the self as a singular and coherent entity is a fictional construct, self, I, and an individual rather comprises conflict, tension, and knowledge claims, that is gender, class, profession. The interpretation of meaning of a text is therefore depend on the self, on the self. An author's intention, he intended the meaning, although the author's own identity as a stable self with a single and a discernible intent is also fictional construct, because author writes literature from his imaginary thoughts. So, it is a secondary to the meaning that the reader perceives. So, whatever the author writes or whatever the author thinks when he writes at the time of his time, it is all secondary, becomes to the reader. Why? Because the time, the time changes, and the literary text has no single purpose, meaning, or existence, because it changes from time to time. So, there is a relation between structuralism and post-structuralism, that the meaning of any sentences, any text, any context, the connotation. Rather, I would like to replace the meaning with the word connotation, that it also like the changing of the meaning of the word linguistically. Okay. So, it is necessary to utilize a variety of perspectives to create a multifaceted interpretation of a text, even if these interpretations conflict with each another or with one another. Post-structuralism emerged in France in 1960 as a political turmoil, rebellion and disillusionment with the traditional values, accompanied by a resurgence of interests in feminism, Western Marxism, phenomenology, and nihilism. Feminism, Western Marxism, phenomenology, and nihilism. Many prominent post-structuralists, generally labeled as such by others rather than by themselves, as Jacques Derrida, Michel Foucault, Ronald Barthes. It is he who actually in 1915 to 1980 were the initially structuralists, but later came to explicitly reject most of structuralism's claims, particularly its notion of the fixity of the relationship between the signifier and a signified. Signifier and signified. Cat as a signifier, it signified two different images for two different persons. It might be a furry animal, very polite, or it might be a feline who has claws and who is very expert in scratching. Okay. So, in his 1966 lecture, Structure, Sign and Play in the Discourse of Human Science, Jacques Derrida, okay, who is the prominent figure of post-structuralism, although later he is the founder of the deconstructionism movement, was one of the first to propose some theoretical limitations of the structuralism, theoretical limitations, and identified an apparent and destabilizing or rendering means changing the intellectual life, referring to the displacement of the authors of a text as the having greatest effect on the text itself, in a favor of various readers of the text, which came to know as post-structuralism. Ronald Barthes, as I told you, in 1915 to 1980, his tenure, originally confirmed structuralist in his text, The Death of the Author, 1968. The Death of the Author, in which he argued that any literary text has multiple meanings and that the author was not the prime source of the works as far as semantic content is concerned. In his 1967 work, The Elements of Semiology, he also advanced the concept of the meta-language, a systemized way of talking about concepts like meaning and grammar beyond the constraints of traditional language. So, post-structuralism it changes its mood from structuralism, and it emphasizes on the lesser items mentioned in a literature, and on the basis of that interpretation, the reader used to the reader used to deconstruct, the reader used to understand, the reader used to connote the meaning, and the meaning does not stand by itself, whatever is written by the writer. Okay. So, this 15 minutes video will I think will be palatable for you to understand the basic concepts. Then we in my next video I will teach you about more about post structuralism. Okay, thank you and have a nice day.